In this video, we're going to cover some aspects of Daniel's entire book. The main theme in his book that less than 1 in 100 people that I run into know about. And I don't know, maybe you've run across this and maybe you know all about it and you can explain it better. Basically, I just want to go over this. This is my R sword. I use the NLT version, 2nd edition. I went through and I highlighted all the keywords. Keywords are words that are the same, similar, and related. During, talking about time. Third year, talking about time. Reign, it's kind of like, you know, king and reign are related. And then, so I go through and I highlight all of these keywords that are the same, similar, related, and then I start looking for patterns. Okay. All Bible authors will repeat keywords to draw attention to them. In other words, they're going to draw our attention to the main theme in a chapter or story. And here we see, in this purple, we see strong, learning, knowledge, trained. Strong is usually related to strength and wisdom and stuff like that, usually related to, when we're talking about learning and knowledge and related to commandments and law and stuff like that. In this one, strong probably wouldn't, but it's just the way I did it. So we see learning, knowledge, trained. Trained is repeated here. And as we go down, we're looking for kind of a pattern here. We come up with understanding, wisdom, special ability to interpret the meanings of visions and dreams. It's kind of a phrase. Training. And then we see something strange here. We see after this group of keywords, we see period, completed, and then we see, you know, there's 3 words: king, chief of staff, king. And obviously, you know, we can see this chapter is going to be dealing with learning, understanding, and wisdom. But we know, if you know this chapter, Daniel chapter 1, you know it's the king's teaching and everything else. If you look at verse 4, select only the strong, healthy, and good-looking young men, he said. Make sure they are well-versed in every branch of learning. Well-versed might also be highlighted. And are gifted with knowledge and a good judgment, and are suited to serve the royal palace. Train these young men in the languages and literature of Babylon. Now, right away, here we see they were brought to Babylon as captives, and they were brought to serve. So these are related too. Enter, and then they will enter into royal service. So we can see, you know, these keywords really do highlight the main theme. Now, if we go on down to verse 17, this is the summation of this chapter. Daniel's going to summarize, give us a summary on here. God gave these young men an unusual attitude for understanding every aspect of literature and wisdom. And God gave Daniel the special ability to interpret the meaning of visions and dreams. When the training period ordered by the king was completed, the chief of staff brought all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and no one impressed them as much as Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Those are names that are hard to remember. So they entered the royal service. You see a little bit of movement here. They're brought in, they entered the service. When the king consulted them in any matter requiring wisdom and balanced judgment, he found them 10 times more capable than any of the magicians and enchanters in his entire kingdom. David remained in the royal service until the first year of the reign of King Cyrus. Now, one thing I noticed with highlighting these key words is Daniel refers to these people as magicians and enchanters. And realistically, I mean, if we knew anything about, Babylon, we would probably call them priests. And I didn't notice this until I was writing a book on the temple or the tabernacle, and I was writing about, out of books Moses wrote. Moses never referred to the priest. We would refer to them as priests in Egypt. He referred to them as magicians and some other words, but Moses tended to stay away from calling them priest. And I think Daniel was doing the same thing here. So we see right here that we're setting up knowledge in two different patterns. And what I want to do is show you the main theme throughout Daniel's book is communication. Here we see that we went over this scripture, and what it's doing is it's basically telling us how the king had these young men instructed, trained these young men in the language and literature of Babylon. Language, literature, they're both related. Communication. Train these young men in the communication of Babylon. Now, that's chapter 1. So we see the form of communication here, but it's being controlled by the king. Let's take a look at chapter 2. And what we want to do is start out, look at the introduction. One night during the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had such a disturbing dreams that he couldn't sleep. He called his magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers, so he calls in his priest, and he demanded that they tell him what he dreamed. And he stood before the king and he said, I have had a dream that deeply troubles me, and I must know what it means. Then the astrologers answered the king in Aramaic, Long live the king, tell us the dream, and we will tell you what it means. And there's 100 sermons on this thing, so I'm not going to really get into sermonizing on these things, but here we see a form of communication. We see a lot of communication words: called, demanded, tell, said, answered. All right, so we do see a lot of communication, and once again, when we take a look at this main theme here, we can see it concerns dream. When we scan through here, we see the word dream repeated again and again and again. Let me get down to verse 16 here. Daniel went at once to see the king and requested more time to tell the king what the dream meant. And here we see two words associated with time: at once and time. Then, see, this is a transition from one time to another time. That's important when you're reading scripture. You always look at the transition of time, and you can see how one builds upon another. Then Daniel went home and told his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, what had happened. He urged them to ask the God of heaven to show them his mercy by telling them the secret, so they would not be executed along with the other wise men in Babylon. That night the secret was revealed to Daniel in the vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven. He said, Praise the name of God forever and ever, for he has all wisdom and power. Now, let me show you another thing here. You notice there's urged. Urged has to do with speaking, ask, telling. When you see three similar words in any verse or in the Bible, you know this is like a key verse. And this is a key one because it describes what Daniel's doing. A lot of people that I talk to, they take a look at this and they go, okay, you know, and ask them in chapter 2, you know, what lesson do we learn from chapter 2 about how God communicates with us? And most people will answer dream. Well, if you look back at the beginning, Nebuchadnezzar had the dream, but Nebuchadnezzar didn't know what it meant. So was that communicating with God? Not quite. Not on any level that I would say. But then Daniel went home and told his friends, and he urged them to ask the God of heaven and telling them. Okay, so basically, what is this telling us about? Daniel went. It took 1, 2, 3, 4 people, and when they're urging to ask, what is this referring to? Actual prayer. Daniel is asking his friends to pray. So, really, this is telling us that prayer is one form of communication with God. That night the secret was revealed to Daniel in a vision. If you look up this word vision, it has a lot of different meanings. It could have been just an answer of prayer. It could have been just hearing God. We don't know if he was taken off in a vision. But if you look at the original way, actually you can click into King James Plus and look at it. Then was a secret revealed unto Daniel. And revealed is to bring over, to carry over, to reveal in a night that's basically, you know, a night vision or something. It has a bunch of different meanings. And vision, a sight, to look, vision. So, we can't be sure if it was a vision or not. We don't know. But it began with asking God. So it began with prayer. Then he said, praise the God of heaven forever and ever, for he has all wisdom and power. He controls the course of world events. He removes kings and sets up other kings. He gives wisdom and knowledge to the scholars. See how these words are repeated? It brings us right back. But now we see a contrast. Before it was the king giving his wisdom and knowledge. At the end of it, Daniel was giving praise to God, and here again he's giving praise to God. So we see a contrast, and those are important to pay attention to also. He reveals deep and mysterious things and knows what lies hidden in darkness, though he is surrounded by light. See the contrast here? Hidden, reveals. These are contrasting words. Keywords can also be contrasting words when they're related. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors, for you have given me wisdom and strength. You have told me what we asked of you and revealed to us what the king demanded. Now, here, since we see this contrast, it's God is giving them the wisdom and the knowledge and the strength and the answers and all of this stuff, and they got it by asking the God of heaven. So the lesson is in the beginning, chapter 1, chapter 2 of Daniel is explaining where do we get this correct wisdom and knowledge from. Obviously, you know, you can look back and you can study the whole process of the food and see how the food is kind of a spiritual bearing. So go back, study that, and take a look at it with what we've learned so far in the first 2 chapters. The second part of the video get a lot deeper into the ways that God communicates with us.